32 White going deep. Oh, he's got chosen. Beating Sertan for 6.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the 13th episode of the All Things Sports Talk podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sizer. Today, we have a very special guest. He is Robbie Chosen Anderson, an NFL household name wide receiver who has over 5,000 career receiving yards, 30 touchdowns in his 10-year NFL career. You see him in the back, a New York Jet, Carolina Panther, Arizona Cardinal, and a Miami Dolphin. How you doing, Chosen?
I'm doing great, bro. I appreciate the great introduction and, truly honored to have this opportunity with you, man.
Well, thank you for coming on. This is a true honor for myself, just a young kid who loves your game and gets to talk to you here today.
Appreciate it, bro. And, I just want to let you know before we start, man, you're going to be on Sports and doing big things one day, dog.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
For sure.
Maybe I'll call, we're getting this later. Maybe I'll call one of your games. So sit next to you in the broadcast booth. But, first and foremost, on this podcast, we like to go deep inside the players, away from the game. You guys have a life away from football. So first and foremost, who is Chosen Anderson?
Sorry, repeat that.
So, first and foremost, who is Chosen Anderson away from the game of football?
First off, a man of God, a husband, a father, a son, and, just living in my purpose, relaxed guy, just humble and appreciative for life.
Yes, sir. Well, you want to take care of your family, for your wife, your kid, and then everyone else in your tight circle, so you turned to football. What was it like, playing in the NFL?
Playing in the NFL is cool. It's a lot of fun, especially when you sit back and you really absorb what's going on and how big it is. But playing in the NFL is truly an honor. You get to play a little kid's game on a huge stage, and I look at it as the cherry on top is you get to make a lot of money doing it. That can set you and your generations up for a great way.
Facts, and you are currently an NFL free agent. I'm sure you will be on a team. I'm sure, you're still training hard. But say an NFL team called you like, hey, Chosen, what are we getting when we sign you? What is an NFL team getting out of Chosen Anderson?
Hard worker, a great athlete, a big play waiting to happen, and just a veteran leader that's able to bring that chemistry amongst the guys around him and, lead them in the ways that, I once needed to be led, and, just the asset to the team, to the organization, somebody that's there for the right reasons and somebody that loves football.
Right. Talking about being hard, you have to go up against the best defensive backs in the NFL. If there was one guy that, you had to go up against that really gave you a challenge, who would that be and why?
It's hard to say one, but I'm gonna give it a tie between Stephon Gilmore, Xavier Howard, and Jalen Ramsey.
Okay, well, all two of those guys played for the Dolphins, and you were teammates with Jalen when you were with the Dolphins. Did you go up against him in practice, and what was that like? Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, that's exactly it right there. We went against each other every day. When he came back off IR, and I was either on scout team or he was on scout team, so we were going against each other all day.
Right, we talked about him playing for the Dolphins. You grew up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What's it like playing for the hometown team, the Miami Dolphins?
Cool, it was cool. Had been driving by the stadium my whole life. Watching the Dolphins growing up and going to games, and then having that experience to be a Dolphin was a really, very cool experience.
Right, it was cool for myself seeing you in a Dolphin uniform. And when I went to the game against Denver, when you got that touchdown, the stadium, the Hard Rock, it was rocking. What was that atmosphere like for yourself?
Hard Rock popping like a rocket.
Yes, sir. talking about being a rocket, you have a big chain, a rocket on it because you're so fast. How does that help your game?
Being fast, I take the top off, hit the gas and gone. And if I'm even, I'm leaving.
Right. And talking about, you said I would be on Sports Center one day, which means a lot. About a week or two ago, you went on CBS, and said you're still grinding and stuff. But is that something we could see in your future when you have to hang up the cleats, maybe be a broadcaster one day?
Sure. Even now that I'm still playing, I'm into it now. So I figure why wait until I'm done playing and not make the most of now. So I've been doing some training with and reaching out to a lot of my mentors and them guiding me in the direction to expand into that career. So I've been, I'm already, planting those seeds and putting in the work to create the opportunity.
Exactly. And hopefully I get to sit one day next to you in the broadcast booth.
Nah, for sure.
But we talked about you staying ready. What does a day in the life of yourself look like? Like training, obviously, and away from football.
Just consistent. I got a great trainer and great trainers and, just letting them do their part and just committing to it and staying consistent and getting to it every day, waking up, getting straight to the workout, getting to the work and, those daily deposits. And then, just nutrition, hydration and nothing, and, it's not too complicated. It's just the commitment and sticking to it.
Right. When you went on CBS, you said you may be 31 on paper, but you feel like you're 25. So, when you sign with the NFL team this season, why is it going to be a breakout season for you?
Just my focus. I think last year with me having a chance to step back, it allowed me to develop a whole new hunger and just my will, and just the new energy I have. I think being a father now and wanting to make plays and my child be able to witness me in my element and just knowing that I have a lot of untapped potential and a lot of goals I'm still working to accomplish and determined to make it happen.
Well, I can't wait to see that happen. When you
Appreciate
are on
it.
the field, you have a lot of drip. So, what is your go-to like drip essentials on and off the field?
It's hard to say a go-to.
Or like
I
something
was
like a few pieces you like putting on?
Yeah, I would say as of recently the stuff that I've been designing, I got some stuff that I'm working on putting out. So I would say I've been tapped into the stuff I've created lately.
What does that stuff look like?
Give away the no previews. We just gonna pop out
All right.
for
One
sure.
day, when it's on sale, I gotta get it. I gotta buy a piece.
Hit that.
Yes, sir. And then obviously football, you train with a lot of great wide receivers, even if they're in college. Jacoby George, a great Miami Hurricane legend. I know it's a good friend of yours. We saw you training with Jeremiah Smith, but if there's one guy in college football or the NFL that's going like have a explosive season, who would that be? And why should we keep our eyes out for them?
I'm looking forward to training with JoJo Trader and me and Marquise Brown gonna get some work in and Xavier Worthy in the upcoming near future. I'm looking forward to working out with them.
Yes, so at the combine, Cam Ward said JoJo was the next up at Miami. I'm not sure if you follow his. I'm sure you follow his game on Miami. What do you like so much about his game?
The big play waiting to happen. But I think also too, his size doesn't determine his will. To me, he's a big body. He's like all structures of like a possession, big body, playmaker, shifty receiver, all put into like a small body. But like where you'll underestimate him, but he has a lot of capability.
Right. And talking about being underestimated, people underestimated you big time coming out of Temple. You were undrafted free agent. You signed with the New York Jets, but how hard was that going undrafted, but you ultimately made a name for yourself?
I wouldn't really say it was like hard or nothing like that. It just, it took what I was trained to do and I just had to apply it every day and, just lock in and make the most of all my opportunities. But it wasn't really, nothing too difficult. I knew I was confident I was gonna make it happen and, God blessed me with a lot of natural born gifts and, I just had the will and the determination to get it done.
Yes, sir. Amen. Describe your game in 3 words.
My game, hard for me to choose 3 words.
I'll go and then you go.
I'll say playmaker, touchdown. I don't know. It's hard to say 3 words. Let me hear what. Let's see what you got.
All right. Speed,
Yeah.
physical.
Mm,
Your people look at you as small, I'm skinny, but that doesn't affect you. You're still gonna run through a defensive back if you have to. Let's see. And then we can do rocket touchdown machine.
appreciate that. Yeah, I was definitely say athletic, speed, and physical playmaker, touchdown, big play waiting to happen.
Yes, sir. And then if there's like a favorite play you have in your NFL career, what is that play?
My favorite play, honestly, I probably would say tie between 3 plays. The touchdown, my touchdown against the Carolina Panthers 2017 in the back of the end zone against the 2 defenders. My touchdown 2019 against the Dallas Cowboys, the long one for like 92 yards. And then the touchdown with the Dolphins against the Broncos. Between
Yes,
those
sir.
three, I say those are like my top ones.
My favorite. You're going right past PS2.
Yeah.
And then, we see in the back of magazine it says Robbie chosen RO, different spelling. And then you went to a different spelling of Robbie, but why did you ultimately decide, you want to be called Chosen Anderson?
When I changed the spellings of my names, me personally, it was like me entering new chapters and just wanting that to be, signified and defined through that. And when I entered the chapter of chosen, I felt like I was entering another state of life and just wanted to redefine everything for myself and it to be seen visibly.
Right. For you get to be seen, a lot of fans look up to you. You take time, you take pictures with them, you give back through autographs, if you show up at a camp, come on my podcast. But why is it so important for you to give back to your fans?
I don't like to consider them fans. They're my supporters. Them believing in me. That's what I do it for. To make you guys smile and y'all energy and support. It keeps me going. Sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of the time. I just feel in my purpose. I'm here to inspire. And I like to treat people how I'd want to be treated. There's people that I look up to and motivated by, and I would love to have that personal relationship with them and have, that's happened for me. So, I was once that little kid in the stands. So, I just know how much that means and, just how God teaches me to be.
Yeah, that means a lot, because when I was younger, I won't say the player's name, but I asked him for a picture. He looked at me, said no, and then just kept on walking. And that sits with you for a while.
I had a similar instance like that when I was young. At a baseball game, a guy like act like he was gonna give me the ball and
I too, when
pull
I
the
was at
ball.
baseball.
Yeah, and then he kept running. So that's why ever since I was young, I always wanted to be relatable to the fans. And, you know, it's a cool experience to have that connection with your fans because, never know one day that same person, when you're a broadcaster, they gonna want you to interview them and you might not want to do it.
Right. When I was younger, I had the opportunity to meet Jason Taylor. That sits with me, for many years to go, just a young kid. And then, still to this day. And then a guy that does get hated on a lot, in my opinion, for no reason, is Dolphins quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. You had the opportunity to play with Tua. What is one thing you want fans to let know about Tua that we might not know?
Stop trying to blame him for everything. Um, in football, the head coach and the quarterback always get the blame because they're seeing the most, and sometimes it really might not be their fault. But I would like Dolphins fans and that not Dolphins fans, the 50-50 fans, because if you're a real fan, you're never gonna turn your back on a player. But I would like them to, ease off a little bit and, just embrace him and understand that he's a hard worker, he's a great man, and he's a great quarterback, and he's done a lot of great things. So I just would like to see them, appreciate him more and support him more. Not saying that they do or don't, but chill with all that hating.
Yes, sir, for real. After every Dolphin game, win or loss, a lot of wins coming this year. I still wear Dolphin stuff to school. And people are like, why are you wearing that? You guys just lost. But, I love my team. I support my team, and I'm going to support them through the ups and downs, just not when we're winning.
That's how it's supposed to be.
Yes, sir. And then we have one more question for you, and then we'll let you get out of here. You're a big jewelry guy. I know that. You went on GQ on the rocks. I love jewelry. I got my big piece on today. But what are some of your favorite personal jewelry pieces?
I don't know. To me, I don't really care for jewelry how I once used to. I think I kind of matured from it a little bit. It's kind of a little annoying sometimes putting all that stuff on. But I would say lately, I like my ring that my wife got me. I would say
Nice.
yeah, that's probably my favorite lately.
Yeah, that's a personal piece because you like always gonna have that significance on it. And then one more thing, what is something you want to let NFL fans and your fans know about you for this season?
I just want them to know, keep that belief that, my best is on its way and I'm working to do everything I can to make it happen and that right opportunity is gonna come.
Yes, sir. Well, I can't wait to watch you, Rob, chosen for a great season. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you again so much for coming on the All Things Sports Talk podcast for episode 13.
And I appreciate it a lot too. And, salute to you, bro. You're doing great things and keep it up, man. I'm excited to continue to see your growth and success.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And when you sign to NFL team, I know you're going to post on Instagram. So where can the people find you on social media?
My Instagram and Twitter, Chosen One RA.
Also be in the link in description, guys. Go give him a follow. Thank you, Chosen Anderson. Best of luck to you, my guy. Thank you.